the idea that Trump has asserted on behalf of the military-industrial complex that there should just be a ceasefire without getting to the root causes of this conflict is a non-starter from the Russian point of view.
Why don't we start with the, Trump and Putin's meeting, which is set to take place in a couple of days from now. And they've met in the past. Last time they met was in 2018 in Helsinki when Trump endorsed Putin's claims that there was no interference in Russian elections. And then before that in 2017. This time around, the world, however, is looking a very different place. What do you think, apart from Russia and Ukraine war, is going to be on the agenda?
I have to say the meeting came as a surprise to me because in public, the United States has not taken any measures that would actually lead to an end of the war in Ukraine. I put it on the U.S. side because I believe that this is a war fundamentally provoked by the United States over a 30-year period, actually. It's a war of NATO expansion. That is an effort that began in the 1990s, contrary to the promise that the United States had given to the Soviet Union and then to Russia that NATO would not move 1 inch eastward. But when the Soviet Union ended in 1991, the United States reneged on its promise and began NATO enlargement. Actually, that dates back to 1994 when President Bill Clinton made that terrible decision. Since then, NATO has expanded eastward with the intention, explicit intention, of surrounding Russia, and for many in the American political elite, of defeating Russia or dividing Russia, or a term that's sometimes used in Washington, decolonizing Russia. But it all added up to the same thing, which is that after the Cold War, the U.S. policy has been to defeat Russia, not to live peacefully with Russia. Now, the reason that the meeting surprised me when it was announced a couple of days ago is that it's clear what is happening. Russia is saying, if you want an end to this war, we have to get to the root causes of this war. That is essentially NATO enlargement, but many other things alongside that. The United States made a coup in Ukraine in 2014, which brought in this pro-NATO regime after overthrowing a president that wanted neutrality for Ukraine, which is the right policy for Ukraine. Then the United States dissed a treaty that could have prevented the full-scale escalation. That was the Minsk II agreement, endorsed by the UN Security Council, that called for autonomy in eastern Ukraine for the ethnic Russian population of that region. The United States told the Ukrainians, don't do it. Then in early 2022, after the Russian invasion that began on February 24th, 2022, there was a peace agreement almost completed between Russia and Ukraine based on Ukraine's neutrality. And the United States swooped in and told Zelensky, don't sign that. We'll fight on, we'll defeat Russia. So I say all of this as a prelude to saying, what is this meeting about? If President Trump says finally the truth, which is that NATO will not enlarge eastward, that the United States will stop its relentless attempt for regime change in Russia or to surround Russia, and that there will be, therefore, a neutral and secure Ukraine, then there can be peace. But President Trump has not had the guts to say that. I don't know what he believes in any event personally, but he's surrounded by the U.S. military-industrial complex, which absolutely doesn't believe it. So I'm interested, of course, what will this meeting bring? But the idea that Trump has asserted on behalf of the military-industrial complex that there should just be a ceasefire without getting to the root causes of this conflict is a non-starter from the Russian point of view. Because from Russia's point of view, that just means that the West will restart the war on its convenient date at any time, rather than getting to the fundamental reasons for this war in the first place. In this regard, I believe the Russians are right. If this war is to end, it should end by addressing the fundamental reasons for this conflict. The United States was the strong side of this over the last 30 years, and it basically said to Russia, we can do what we want, where we want, when we want, and we will do so. And that's why this war continues. If Trump will say something different, there could be an end to the war.
Right. And how confident are you that Trump will be able to do what Obama and Biden did not? Because you talked about the role of the military-industrial complex and, of course, the U.S. deep state. Would he be able to, play by a different playbook, different from Obama's, Biden's, and other presidents before them? And especially because, he sold his voters on peace presidency. And Russia-Ukraine war, of course, is the biggest war that the West has its eyes set on. Do you think Trump, if not for anything else, not for the sake of the millions of Ukrainians who are dead, not for the sake of dead Russians, but perhaps for the sake of the peace prize that he's eyeing, he'd perhaps be able to, walk away from what has been the U.S. foreign policy so far on this matter?
He could, of course. It's his job. I often say, I've said for decades, that the main job of the president of the United States is to put the foot on the brake of the war machine of the United States. That's his job. It's not an easy job. He's not very good at this job because he does not communicate political ideas. He does not speak to the American people. He does not build a base. His idea is that everything is backroom trades, backroom transactions, threats, bluster, bluffs. On that basis, he can't face down the military-industrial complex. It surrounds him. The only way a president can face down the military-industrial complex is true leadership. I don't think Trump has it in him, but I hope I'm wrong. I stand to be corrected. But for that, Trump would have to explain to the American people, by the way, who don't want war, to explain, here's how we get out of this. Here's how we got into it, and here's how we get out of it. He says, this is Biden's war. Okay, that's politics. The truth is, it's also his war from the first term. It's Obama's war. Obama oversaw the coup in 2014 that brought in this current Ukrainian regime. It goes back to Clinton. The truth is, this is a U.S. deep state war. This is a CIA, Pentagon, military-industrial complex war. It has an agenda. The agenda was spelled out, by the way, very clearly and explicitly by Zbigniew Brzezinski in 1997, who explained everything of what the U.S. elite thought. What Brzezinski said was, we will make Russia a second or third-rate power by surrounding it in the Black Sea region so that Russia can't project its power. And Brzezinski concluded in 1997, Russia will have no alternative but to agree or accede to the European NATO enlargement. Well, Brzezinski was wrong. But the point is that Trump would have to explain why we're changing direction. So far, he's not shown the intelligence, the timing, the public side, the understanding of this. So I'm a little doubtful, but I'm hoping I'm wrong.